Your manager called me into a meeting with HR. Kira, after 15 years, we're restructuring your position, she announced smugly. Clean out your desk by Friday. I smiled politely and said, I understand completely. I had no idea how much fun Monday would be. Kira, after 15 years at TechBanty, we're going to restructure your position. Marjorie Thompson announced, a note of barely concealed satisfaction in her voice. She sat across from me in the small conference room, flanked by Denise from HR, both wearing carefully crafted expressions of corporate regret. The company is moving in a new direction, Denise added, sliding a manila folder across the table. Your contributions have been invaluable, but we're consolidating the research division under the product development team. I nodded thoughtfully and accepted the folder without opening it. Inside was the standard severance package. 2 weeks for every year of service, continued health coverage for 3 months, and a list of career counseling resources I would never use. I understand perfectly, I replied, my voice steady. These decisions are never easy. Relief washed over their faces. They'd clearly been expecting tears, protests, or anger. After all, I was a 55-year-old woman being pushed out of the tech industry, where youth was valued over experience. What they didn't know was that I'd been expecting this moment for weeks, ever since a thread of misdirected emails had landed in my inbox the previous month. We'll need you to clear out your desk by Friday, Marjorie continued, gaining confidence from my apparent acceptance. We'll need your key card, company laptop, and phone before you leave this afternoon. Your team will be notified. My team. 6 brilliant engineers I'd personally recruited and mentored over the years. The same team that had helped me develop the distributed processing algorithm now powering TVantage's flagship product, AccountsFlow, accounting software used by over 40% of Fortune 500 companies. Of course, I said, rising from my chair. Is there anything else? They exchanged glances, clearly baffled by my composure. Marjorie was the first to recover. That's all for now. Thank you for making this professional. As I walked back to my office, I passed the glass-walled conference room where the executive team met. Through the transparent barrier, I could see CEO Victor Lawson gesturing animatedly at a PowerPoint presentation titled Q3 Revenue Projections. The same Victor Lawson who had taken credit for my algorithm at last year's industry conference, referring to me only as one of the members of our research team. I closed my office door and pulled out my personal phone, sending a single text message. It's happening. Friday is my last day. The reply came instantly. Perfect timing. The contracts are ready. Dinner tonight to finalize details. I smiled, glancing at the calendar on my desk. Today was Wednesday. Friday I would leave TVantage. Fascinating. That night, I met Gregory Shervan at Meridian, an upscale restaurant far from TVantage headquarters. As CEO of Precision Systems, TVantage's biggest competitor, Greg understood the value of discretion. He'd booked a private dining room in the back, shielded from prying eyes by elegant Japanese screens. They actually did it, Greg said, shaking his head after we'd ordered. I suspected they would, but to cut loose the very person who developed their core technology. Victor never understood what he really had, I replied, taking a sip of water. He saw the implementation, the user interface, the marketing potential, but the underlying architecture, to him, it was just tech stuff. The irony was almost too perfect. 3 months ago, I discovered that TVantage's legal team had never filed the patent application for my distributed processing algorithm. When I inquired, they claimed an oversight. They assured me it would be handled immediately, but something in their response felt off. That led me to dig through the company's internal documentation. That's when I found it. A strategy memo outlining plans to claim the algorithm as company-developed technology, with no specific inventor attribution. They planned to push me out before securing the patent, knowing that intellectual property developed by employees typically belongs to the company. What TVantage didn't know was that I'd been refining the algorithm in my spare time, using my personal equipment. These enhancements, which dramatically increased processing efficiency by 43%, were not covered by my employment contract. Last month, I had filed a patent in my own name, complete with development logs and timestamps clearly demonstrating the work was completed outside of company time. The patent had been granted with remarkable speed, thanks to Greg introducing me to a top-tier intellectual property lawyer. All the paperwork is finalized, Greg said, sliding a folder across the table. As soon as you sign, Precision Systems officially acquires exclusive licensing rights to your patent. The press release goes out Monday morning, announcing you as our new Chief Innovation Officer. I reviewed the documents carefully, though I'd already memorized the key terms. A 7-figure signing bonus, a substantial equity stake in Precision Systems, and ongoing royalties from all products utilizing my algorithm. What kind of face do you think Victor will make when he realizes what he's done? Greg asked, unable to contain his glee at the prospect. I'm more worried about my team, I admitted. They don't deserve to be caught in the fallout. Greg nodded. He'd already reached out to them. We have positions for all 6 of them if they're interested. Senior-level roles with significant raises. I signed the last page and closed the folder with a crisp snap. I had secured my future, protected my team, and ensured that I would be recognized for my work. To new beginnings, Greg said, raising his glass. And to recognizing your own worth, I added, clinking my glass against his. Thursday and Friday passed in a whirlwind of exit interviews, knowledge transfer meetings, and farewells with colleagues. I maintained my professional composure throughout, even as rumors spread through the company. Administrative assistants gave me sympathetic looks in the hallways. Junior developers approached awkwardly, asking if I could provide LinkedIn recommendations before I left. I meticulously documented everything, every project, every password, every process, knowing full well that Tibanti would soon discover just how thorough I'd been. My decision to leave comprehensive transition notes was not an act of kindness. It was proof that I had acted in good faith, while the company had not. During my final exit interview Friday afternoon, Denise from HR went through the standard checklist with mechanical efficiency. You understand that any intellectual property developed during your employment remains the property of TechBanti, she stated, pushing a non-disclosure agreement across the table. Of course, I replied pleasantly. Anything developed within the scope of my employment, using company resources, during work hours. I placed a slight emphasis on those qualifiers, but Denise was too busy ticking boxes to notice. And you affirm that you have no copies of any confidential company information? I have taken nothing that belongs to T-Vantage, I confirmed truthfully. After all, the patent was mine. As I packed up my personal items from my desk, family photos, a collection of conference badges commemorating 15 years of industry events, the coffee mug my team had given me last Christmas, Marjorie strolled by, leaning against my doorframe with affected casualness. Just wanted to check in, make sure everything is in order for your departure, she said, watching me place the items into a crystal-clear carton. It is, I replied, wrapping a small award I'd received for the very algorithm that was now at the center of my plans. The irony was not lost on me as I carefully nestled it between layers of tissue paper. You know, Kira, these restructuring decisions are never personal, Marjorie continued. Victor feels the company needs to move in a more youthful direction. I looked up, meeting her gaze directly. I understand perfectly. Business is business. Something in my tone made her pause for the briefest of moments. Uncertainty flickered across her face, but she quickly dismissed it. What could a 55-year-old, soon-to-be unemployed woman possibly do? Going to take some time off? She asked, a synthetic note of concern in her voice. Actually, I already have something lined up, I replied. I start Monday. Oh, surprise registered on her face. That's quick. Something interesting? I smiled widely. A leadership position. I'm very excited about it. She nodded distractedly, already thinking about other matters. Well, good luck with that. As I walked out of Tibanti's Glass headquarters for the final time, key card surrendered, personal belongings in tow, I took a moment to look back at the building where I'd spent 15 years of my career. On the top floor, I could see the executive conference room illuminated for an evening meeting, likely discussing how to redistribute my responsibilities amongst younger, less experienced, and significantly less expensive personnel. What they didn't know was that in less than 72 hours, a very different kind of emergency meeting would be taking place in that same room. Monday dawned bright and clear. I dressed carefully in my new dark gray suit, a power ensemble purchased specifically for this day. The Precision Systems town car arrived precisely at 7:30 a.m. to take me to their headquarters, where I would begin my first day as Chief Innovation Officer. The press release went out at 7 a.m. Greg informed me as I settled into my new, floor-to-ceiling windowed office. The industry newsletters are already picking it up. The comms team is monitoring reactions. The announcement was crafted with strategic precision. Precision Systems acquires exclusive rights to revolutionary processing algorithm. Welcomes creator Dr. Kira Jennings as Chief Innovation Officer. It detailed my background, highlighted my role as the sole inventor of the patented technology, and described how Precision Systems would integrate the algorithm into its next generation of products. Most importantly, it clearly stated that any company currently using the technology would need to negotiate licensing agreements with Precision Systems going forward. At precisely 9:15 a.m., my phone lit up with the first text message from my former team at T-Vantage. "It's complete chaos here. What did you do?" It was from Miguel, my lead developer. I smiled and typed back, "Check your personal email. All 6 of you have offers pending." Meanwhile, 8 miles away at T-Vantage headquarters, the Monday morning executive meeting scheduled was undergoing a drastic transformation. According to Miguel's updates throughout the morning, Victor had arrived at the office to find the company's general counsel and CFO waiting for him at the door, pale and grim-faced. The industry announcement had hit their inboxes simultaneously, setting off immediate alarm bells. By 9:30 a.m., what should have been a routine start-of-the-week meeting had morphed into an emergency crisis session. Board members were calling in remotely. The legal team was frantically reviewing my employment contract and documentation on the algorithm's development. "They're pulling every file with your name on it," Miguel reported. "Someone just wheeled in all the research division servers for the tech team to analyze." I could picture the scene perfectly. Victor pacing the conference room, demanding explanations from Marjorie and the legal department. The stock would already be reacting to the news. Investors hated uncertainty, and this announcement had created plenty of it. At 10:45 a.m., I received an email from Victor himself. The desperation practically emanated from my screen. "Kira, there seems to be a misunderstanding. Please call me ASAP to discuss." I forwarded it to Precision Systems' legal team without reply. By noon, the industry was buzzing with speculation. T-Vantage stock had dropped 7% since market open, while Precision Systems had experienced a 12% surge. 3 different tech magazines had requested interviews with me about the strategic coup that had rocked the accounting software sector. "How does it feel?" Greg asked, stopping by my office as I settled in. "Validated," I replied honestly. 15 years of watching others take credit for my work, of being told I should be grateful just to have a seat at the table, and now finally recognition. My new executive assistant appeared at the door. "Dr. Jennings, the development team is ready for you in the main conference room." She hesitated. "The CEO of T-Vantage has called 4 times in the past hour." "Let him know I'm in meetings all day," I replied calmly. "I'll have our legal team contact him to discuss licensing options later this week." As I headed into my first meeting as Chief Innovation Officer, my phone buzzed with another update from Miguel. "The board just called an emergency session. Victor looks like he's about to explode. P.S. My team and I accept your offer. When can we start?" Tuesday morning. The full impact of my departure had become clear to everyone at T-Vantage. Their flagship product, AccountsFlow, relied entirely on my algorithm to process the massive datasets that gave it an edge over competitors. Without licensing rights to my patent, they faced 2 equally unpalatable options: negotiate with Precision Systems, or rebuild their core technology from scratch, a process that would take years and millions in development costs. "Victor's called an all-hands meeting for 2 p.m., Miguel texted. It was his last day at T-Vantage, and he and the rest of my former team would start at Precision Systems the following Monday. "Bet they're going to try to sue you." I forwarded his message to our legal department, who replied almost instantly, "Let them try. Your documentation is impeccable. Development logs, timestamps, personal equipment usage, all clearly established. We've prepared for this scenario." Meanwhile, I was settling into my new role with remarkable ease. The respect I received at Precision Systems was a stark contrast to my final years at T-Vantage. When I spoke in meetings, people actually listened. My male colleagues didn't repackage my ideas and present them as their own. My age and experience were seen as assets, not liabilities. "The engineering team is implementing your efficiency enhancements," Greg informed me during our afternoon briefing. Initial tests show a 51% performance boost. Even better than we'd projected. I admitted that I'd made a few further improvements that I never shared with T-Vantage. After discovering they were planning to eliminate my position, I saw no reason to give them my best work. Their loss, our gain, Greg replied with a satisfied smile. Speaking of which, the first licensing inquiry came in this morning. Not from T-Banty yet. They're still in denial, but from Dataflow Systems. They're worried about getting caught in the crossfire. At 3:30 p.m., Miguel sent a detailed report of Victor's all-hands meeting. The CEO had attempted to project confidence, assuring staff that T-Banty would vigorously defend our proprietary technology, but the anxiety in the room was palpable. Several employees had already updated their LinkedIn profiles, sensing the company's vulnerability. Marjorie looked like she was about to faint when someone asked her directly if they hadn't secured the patent, Miguel reported. After that, Victor cut the Q&A short. By Wednesday, the industry fallout had intensified. 2 major clients had contacted Precision Systems about switching from AccountsFlow, concerned about T-Banty's ability to maintain the product without its algorithm creator. Our stock had climbed another 8%, while T-Banty's continued its downward slide. I received a call from Denise, the HR representative who had slid my severance package across the table just days earlier. Kira, she began, her voice carefully professional. I'm calling to discuss the situation with your patent. We believe there may have been a misunderstanding about the ownership rights. I don't believe there's any misunderstanding, I replied calmly. My employment contract clearly states that intellectual property developed on my own time, using my own resources, remains mine. The patent documentation confirms exactly that. Victor was hoping you'd consider coming in to speak with us to explore options. Any discussions would need to go through Precision Systems' legal department now, I replied. I'm sure they'd be happy to arrange a meeting to discuss licensing terms. The silence on the other end of the line spoke volumes. I'll pass that along, Denise finally managed. That afternoon, I led my first formal presentation to the Precision Systems Board of Directors, outlining our technology roadmap with my algorithm as its centerpiece. As I stood confidently at the head of the table, not tucked away in the back as I'd been at T-Banty, I heard Greg's murmur of approval. Friday, barely a week after I'd walked out of T-Vantage for the final time, the company had entered full crisis mode. Their stock had plummeted 23% since market open on Monday, triggering concerned calls from major investors. Industry analysts were publishing speculative articles with titles like, "Can T-Banty survive the algorithm crisis?" and "How one strategic blunder can cost a tech giant everything." Through my industry contacts, I learned that Victor had finally acknowledged the gravity of the situation to the board. T-Vantage would either have to license my algorithm from Precision Systems, likely at exorbitant rates that would decimate their profit margins, or undertake a complete rebuild of AccountsFlow without using any technology covered by my patent. They've started conducting interviews for a new development team, Miguel told me during our Friday video call, where we discussed his upcoming transition to Precision Systems. Victor's claiming they can recreate the functionality in 6 months. I couldn't help but laugh. It took me 3 years to perfect the original algorithm, and I had intimate knowledge of the problem space. Exactly, Miguel agreed. Nobody believes the timeline, especially after your team's mass resignation notice. The knowledge drain is massive. That afternoon, T-Banty's lawyers finally contacted Precision Systems to initiate a dialogue about potential licensing agreements. Our legal team, following the strategy we developed, countered with terms that were technically fair but strategically painful. 3 times the industry standard licensing rate, plus public acknowledgement of my role as the technology's inventor. They'll balk at the acknowledgement more than the cost, Greg predicted as we reviewed the response in his office. Victor's ego won't allow him to admit he pushed out the person who created his core technology. Then they'll have to rebuild, I replied. And every day they spend trying to replicate my work is another day we extend our lead in the market. The following Monday morning, 10 days after my unceremonious dismissal, I led the first meeting with my new innovation team, which included Miguel and the other 5 engineers from T-Banty. The energy in the room was electric as we charted a course for Precision Systems' future. That's the difference between being valued and being seen as expendable, I replied. Here, your expertise is recognized. As we wrapped up the productive session, my assistant appeared at the door. "Dr. Jennings, your board just announced an emergency leadership change. Victor Lawson is stepping down, effective immediately." The news spread rapidly. Within hours, industry publications were reporting that T-Banty's board had lost confidence in Victor's leadership, following the patent oversight that threatened the company's flagship product. Marjorie Thompson was also out, along with the head of the legal department who'd failed to secure the patent properly. That afternoon, I received an unexpected email from Richard Donovan, T-Banty's newly appointed interim CEO. Unlike Victor's desperate message from the previous week, this one was direct and respectful. "Dr. Jennings, congratulations on your new position. I've been brought in to help T-Banty navigate the current situation. I'd like to discuss a fair licensing agreement for your patented technology. We're willing to publicly acknowledge your contributions and make the necessary amends for the previous administration's oversights. Would you be available to meet next week?" I forwarded the email to Greg, adding a simple note, "Complete surrender." His reply came swiftly, "Beautifully executed. The board is celebrating their first big win for Precision Systems. Looks like T-Banty is finally learning a costly lesson about valuing innovation and innovators." 3 months after my departure from T-Banty, I sat on stage at the National Tech Innovation Conference, preparing to deliver the keynote address. The audience was packed with industry leaders, tech journalists, and aspiring developers, many of whom already knew my story. "And now I'm pleased to introduce our keynote speaker," announced the conference organizer, Dr. Kira Jennings, Chief Innovation Officer at Precision Systems, and the mind behind the distributed processing algorithm that has revolutionized data handling across multiple industries. The applause was thunderous as I approached the podium. What a difference a few months could make. Last year, I attended this same conference as part of the T-Banty delegation, seated in the back while Victor gave a presentation on his company's innovations. "Thank you," I began, surveying the attentive faces. "Today, I want to talk about ownership of innovation and the importance of properly valuing intellectual contributions, regardless of where they originate." In my presentation, I detailed the technical aspects of my algorithm, but I also addressed broader issues of recognition and respect within the tech industry. Without mentioning T-Banty directly, I emphasized the importance of companies protecting their innovators, rather than viewing them as expendable resources. Afterwards, during the reception, several young female engineers approached me for advice and mentorship. One of them, barely 30, confided, "Your story changed how I document my work. I started keeping detailed logs of my development process in my own time." "Smart," I replied. "Your innovations deserve protection." At the end of the evening, I checked my phone to find an industry news alert. T-Banty had finally announced the licensing agreement with Precision Systems, acknowledging me by name as the algorithm's creator. Their stock had stabilized, though at a significantly lower valuation than before my departure. 1 year after I was asked to clear out my desk, I sat in my spacious office at Precision Systems, reviewing the quarterly innovation report. Under my leadership, the company had launched 3 groundbreaking products based on my algorithm, capturing significant market share from T-Banty and other competitors. A knock on my door interrupted my analysis. It was Greg, holding a bottle of champagne and 2 glasses. "Happy anniversary," he said, placing the glasses on my desk. "The board asked me to share the news with you personally, before the public announcement. Precision Systems has officially surpassed T-Banty in market valuation. For the first time in the company's history." I smiled, feeling not triumph but quiet satisfaction. That's what happens when you value innovation properly. As Greg poured the champagne, my assistant handed me an elegant envelope containing an invitation to speak at the annual Women in Tech Leadership Summit. The topic, recognizing intellectual worth and how proper documentation changed an industry. "You've become something of an icon, Greg remarked, noticing the invitation. The story about the executive who didn't recognize what she had until it was gone has become a cautionary tale in corporate boardrooms." Richard Donovan, who had remained CEO of T-Banty after the crisis, had implemented sweeping changes to how the company recognized and rewarded innovation. Rumor had it, his new policies on IP protection and inventor recognition were modeled after the program I had established at Precision Systems. "It was never about revenge," I said. raising my glass in a toast. It was about recognition, showing the industry that innovation isn't anonymous, comes from real people who deserve real acknowledgement. Greg nodded, clinking his glass against mine. As the late afternoon sun streamed through my office windows, I reflected on my journey. At 56, I'd finally found what had eluded me throughout my career. Not just success but recognition. My name was now permanently linked to the algorithm that had changed an industry, exactly where it should be.